I am going to propose a walk through time. We are, at the moment, all under varying degrees of house arrest. As a student, this has provided some challenges, some difficulties. I was given the mission to create a documentary. What I have learned is that creating one can be quite difficult when you are an hour north of where all the excitement is happening. That excitement being the city of Toronto, in this case, the Big Smoke, as it's called. No, I find myself, with traffic interrupting my attempts to tell this to you all, once again mired in the hometown that I affectionately refer to as the Black Hole of Earth. Why do I use this title? To start a definition. A black hole, we've all heard of them, is a place in space where gravity pulls everything inside of it. In fact, according to NASA's definition, it pulls so much that even light cannot get out. It usually occurs when a star dies. First, I am not a star. Sure, I guess I am the, Morgan Freeman-like host of this. He really is everywhere, isn't he? Of this little special. I can't really have any of you seeing the quotation marks that I'm showing as I babble about that. However, this is a college project. It is made by none other than, me. I cannot afford the hiring of Morgan Freeman on a student budget, so how about I just tell you the story? I was born in Toronto. We can think of the Big Smoke as a separate star feeling the black hole, but one lurking just outside the range of its scientific... let's just say I was born there. In fact, here. That said, my family brought me to Newmarket in 1984, and they brought me here. We stayed there, here, for a long time, almost until the end of my high school days. Alas, family issue. I won't get into specifics, but my family partially ended up in a few places. I ended up in a guy named Ross's basement while briefly attending York University, although some members of the family moved around a little across this time. Within a year, we ended up here. Then I moved here. Family, during this period, broke up yet again, and I stayed here. Other events occurred. I then attempted the following moves. Barrie, Ontario. Saltburn, England. Victoria, British Columbia, yes everybody, the other side of the country. Mount Albert, Ontario, not quite Newmarket, fairly close. Each time I moved around, however, some sort of odd event, whether it be health issues, family issues, any number of reasons, somehow ended up I was sucked back into Newmarket. As you're watching this, I don't want to be here, but, I can't leave. I know some who did escape. I wish them all well as I'm showing this. No, Newmarket has kept me trapped. The latest attempt was just north to Barrie, Ontario again. That became a nightmare, and my wife, common law, I'm going to use wife, and I ended up once again in Newmarket. The next move after that, still within this town. So, now that the COVID pandemic has us both distancing and trapped or clustered together with, hopefully, loved ones, I figure, why not have a look at this gravitational vacuum and maybe show some changes? I must admit, it has slowly become an interest, perhaps even a fascination of mine, how much the town has changed since I was sentenced here.
Okay, so, poor video aside, as we walk, there is the town in bad focus. Sounds like me in school, bad focus, but anyway, we'll go from here.
population of Newmarket when we moved there in 1984 was a massive 33,000 people. Now, we had a mall, as far as city goes. Mind you, it was literally a hallway from the Sears store to a then nearly completed Zeller's department store location. Ironically, both of these companies have closed and left. We'll see if we get to that. The town's name came on the original idea that since we were a new community, officially a town in 1880 with a whole 2,000 people, and thanks to the railroad running through a market, especially for furs and leather, a market, ta-da! We were Newmarket. Humans, not really all that good at originality. When it comes to naming locations, I mean. Well, an aside. Just look up Paris as a name. You'll find them... Oh yeah, I mean, for crying out loud, France has 2 of them. Back to Newmarket. We'll start with somewhere that was pretty important. This was an abandoned building when my family dragged me north in 1984. It was simply called the Tannery. History? This was once the largest production tannery in the entire English Empire. It was then the Davis Family Leather Tannery. Today, Davis is the name of Newmarket's main roadway in town. Never mind that Davis Drive, as it were, intersects with the street I live on, Main Street. Again, logic? The tannery was given an insanely expensive facelift in 1987 as the town transformed the then dilapidated shell of a brick into a luxury shopping center. It was awesome. I mean, hell, we even had model actress Brooke Shields flown in for the ribbon cutting ceremony. The mall, within 15 years, however, became more an office center than what was intended. Residents simply could not afford the luxuries offered. Is it ironic if I say marketed? Inside, yeah. The train station moved across the street from here to here. Now there's talk of moving that station as well. It is sort of funny in a negative sense. Newmarket was built on industry and the adjoining marketplace therein. When I was a kid, I would jump on my bike and I'd take off down Davis Drive with a few other kids, and we'd make this screaming journey. It's all downhill. Why? We get free art supplies. We were the home of the Dixon Pencil Factory of Canada. Some of the guys used to take their break. They'd just be sitting in the window. We'd all get down there on the bike, and they'd see us. And they would throw stuff down to us. Art pencils that would normally cost you a fortune. Today, they kept the name. The town grew like crazy in the 1980s. We were the home of the first Hyundai manufacturing plant in Canada. We made the wheels for cars such as the Pony, also known as the car that in the late 1980s and early 90s was in seemingly every other driveway in Ontario. We were the first Hyundai plant in Canada to be shut down, unfortunately, as well. Today, it's a small private company that makes parts for whichever company needs them. There were several factories when I was a kid. Most of them are now gone. This place was called Tenetronics. I even had family working there. Now? No. No, despite town pride, these days Newmarket is basically a giant subdivision and a whole bunch of retail. All of the farmland within the town barriers was bought up and paved over. The part that I still find odd is how many buildings in town have been erected but are now empty. In my 36 years of presence, we've had 2 movie theaters shut down, a mall close. You see, the growth of the town was right in line with all of the subdivisions that were, constantly being erected. Except, present day sees Newmarket, for all intents and purposes, mapped out like this. As much as the great Mayor Twinney wanted to build this town, it really is still just a commuter community. The aforementioned Davis Drive was doubled in width, making traffic and driving a nightmare for a lot of drivers. For the new improved bus lines and lanes, problem. Practically no one rides the bus. Trust me on this one. Until last year, I went nearly 10 years without an ability to drive. I would get on the bus in the new improved bus lanes, and on an insane amount of instances be the only one sitting there. I did get to know the drivers quite well. This widening caused nearly every small business to close. No residents were going to go through the trouble of navigating and turning themselves around, U-turning at the medians to double back when they can simply hit Walmart, who will one day likely be the only business left in the world with Amazon, maybe. Seriously, today's Walmart in Newmarket is nearly the equivalent of going to our long-since expanded shopping mall. But let me show you a great example. Here is the difference between driving somewhere in Newmarket and taking the bus. I don't think you'll believe what you're about to see. But wait for it. We'll set things up. We'll pick home as our starting point. All right, sounds good. And we'll pick one of my past occupations before I went back to school as our destination. Now, let's set this up. We'll do this in two ways. We'll do it once with the car. And then we'll do it with the transit. And you'll see what... well, just wait and see. No, the people of Newmarket simply want to do what developers created for them back in the 80s and the 90s. Drive home. Nearly forgot to mention, well, touching on history, that Ontario did build a second major highway to Newmarket in 1989 to make things easier for commuters, as opposed to taking a longer trip out towards the Highway 400, the one that eventually becomes the Trans-Canada, the one we all know. Hence, as I was showing, all businesses are run on the borders of Newmarket, with a giant pen of houses in the middle. We do have unique neighborhoods, though. This one is known as the Patch, quote-unquote. The Patch, as long as I can remember, has been the bad side of town, so to speak. Really, it's simply a subdivision built in the 1960s. However, as house sizes continue to grow and grow, the market for the Patch slowly consisted of those who could not afford the big houses, high-paying jobs, owning a home. It's long been a location of drugs, etc., that kind of thing. And this is known by literally anyone you ask in the town. That market, thanks to the previous closing of industries, as I mentioned earlier, is growing. You see, now, I can't just keep showing these. This is beyond judgmental, and really, the neighborhood is looking considerably better than in other times I've ever ventured in. It's more about what happened here. Child murder, serious drug issues, stabbings. I live on the oldest street in the town, the original Main Street. Around 2000, the town began putting a lot of money into finally fixing up the crumbling street and turned Main Street into a sort of a tourist attraction. There are several restaurants. Fairy Lake, built-up pond in 1830 to work with the lumber and the tannery industries. Now, this place when I moved up here was Newmarket Hydro and supplied for the whole town. All of this said, there are no jobs in Newmarket, for the most part, where anyone middle class can afford to really buy a home or start things out. When people graduate, this was my high school, public school too, they leave. From there, all of that growth consists of commuters who simply get up, drive to Toronto, or somewhere down there anyway, drive home, shop, and go to bed. In all of my years here, again from 1984, one apartment building has been built. There are a few others just beside it that were built within the first few years of us getting here. They're condos. Some of them now rent out units, but by and large, well, put it this way. The new building I just showed is still not full after over a year. Why? Newmarket residents cannot afford it, but that is because more and more Toronto residents are desperately making the commute, however necessary, as they cannot afford to live in Toronto. Several buildings have been erected that look like apartment buildings. They were all, without exception, retirement homes. Why? Baby boomers. The ones who, grew with all of this, are past their proverbial prime. A lot of them still own their original houses as well. It can be sort of entertaining. You can take a walk through a Newmarket neighborhood and it really feels like you're strolling through one of those Florida retirement communities. We do see new residents. Unfortunately, they're moving north, not necessarily for the peaceful community that I've watched the town market itself as over the years. No, they're getting here because Toronto is far too expensive. Never mind that rent is now out of reach for most of that demographic in Newmarket. Most apartments in the basements of others' houses. Even an older apartment building, like this one, was recently categorized as for seniors only. My street's demographic?
Oh my God! No, I'm not going back to bed. I'll go back to bed after I have a shower. I'll be alright. I'm not trying to yell at you, but I already told you what I'm doing. You just went off track. Can I please get by you? Can I please get by you so I can get some clean underwear and shirts and a pair of pants and everything else?
As I create this for you, there is shouting and the 11th and 12th drug deal going down with the dealers who live now below us. I had a customer of theirs steal my bicycle. Stop now. Around the street are homes that slowly become newer as you work your way outward from the town center. If one were to walk from, say, Main Street out toward Leslie Street, the town's eastern border, they will find some younger demographic. They'll even see some homes that are only 20 to 30 years old being torn down, and mammoth structures tucked into those spaces. I mean, oh boy, do they ever look out of place. So when you think about it, Newmarket is continuing, or is it back to? Essentially, its marketing itself is what it was when I got here. A commuter community. I don't recommend that one 5 times fast. There are good parts, don't get me wrong. Boy, do I ever wish we still had the Leaf Farm team. But anyway, the previously mentioned Fairy Lake would be one of them. I'll take you there now. See? Nice place to go. Not necessarily during the COVID pandemic, in some ways, but nice. I come here for at least an attempt at peace and quiet. After that, I leave town. I have to come back, of course, but, well, some molecules, etc., do manage to actually escape and or leave from black holes. Hopefully round 10 will prove successful, as hopefully I am building a Newmarket-free career. I swear, if Hollywood North, quote-unquote, somehow begins to settle here, oh God, they'll hear my screams a light year away. But this was history. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. I can lean out here. We had another drug bust of some sort early this morning, so it's quite a bit quieter, pretty good.